did they really find the lost city of Atlantis? What happened to the city and where is it now? The legend about Atlantis began with Plato, the ancestor of ancient Greek philosophy, who mentioned Atlantis in his most recent works, Critias and Timaeus. In Plato's writing, there was this saying. About 9,000 years ago in Solon, opposite the Pillar of Hercules, there was a large island from which could go to other islands. Opposite the entire land surrounded by the ocean. This is the Atlantis kingdom. The king of this kingdom was called Atlas, son of Poseidon. So, Atlantis is a nation created by God? Atlantis was a superior nation due to the highly developed civilization with formidable army. The people lived there were human, but also godlike. Atlantis was supposed to be perfect in every way. These people live in the high life, but they started to become corrupt, greedy and morally bankrupt. They started to expand their territory by invading other lands, and subjected its people to slavery. Their actions angered God. For that, the head of gods, Zeus, punished the fall by sending violent earthquakes and floods to Atlantis. The nation of Atlantis disappeared in one night. Is Atlantis actually existed, or it was just a story tale made up by Pluto? While many philologists and classicists agree on the fictional story, there are still debate on what served as its inspiration. What if those believers were right about Atlantis? Then, where is it now? Most people believed Atlantis submerged into the ocean. Some believed Atlantis is on land, but do not know where is it. Another group believed Atlantis is in Antarctica, covered under ice. Anyway, there has been a sensation news lately, that people discovered a land that might looks like a relic of Atlantis. It is located in Sahara Desert, and this is the well-known the Eye of the Sahara, also known as Eye of Africa. The name Eye of Sahara was given because of the land structure formation is very similar to a human eye. It is an eroded dome, with 40 km in diameter, exposing sedimentary rock, in layers which appear as concentric rings. In the description of Plato, the central city of Atlantis is formed in circle by circle. The sense of this vortex in Eye of Sahara makes people feel that it is probably the remaining trace of Atlantis. For centuries, only a few local nomadic tribes knew about the Eye of Sahara formation. It was hardly to discover the vortex formation, due to the large scale of the land. It was later discovered in the 1960s, by the Gemini astronauts. When the Gemini 4 mission, a 4-day orbit around Earth, was being prepared in 1965, the astronauts were asked to take photos of Earth's terrain. They were particularly asked to look out for any large circular features, which might be the roots of impact structures. That's how they discovered the Eye of Sahara in Africa. And for a while, scientists did think that the Eye of the Sahara was an impact crater. But they didn't find enough melted rock to make that guess hold water. More theories suggest a much more complicated story behind this incredible natural formation. To people who believe in Atlantis, they see this as the remains of the city of Atlantis, which Plato described as concentric rings of water and land. But, from the outlook, it can barely prove that it is the remain of Atlantis. Now, let's look at these similarities between Atlantis and the Eye of the Sahara. According to Plato, the Atlantis was built in several concentric rings of water and land. Each ring has different measurement of stadion. Stadion is a unit of measure for ancient Rome and ancient Greece. 1 stadion equals to 185 meter. The diameter of the Atlantis is 127 stadion. It is equals to 23.49 kilometer. Which, it is very similar to the inner diameter of the Eye of Sahara. 23.5 kilometer. What about this area here? Plato did not describe much about this area. But, He did said that there are beautiful mountains at the north of Atlantis City and the south is ocean. Then we narrowed down the eye again, as we can see there are some mountains on the north. To the south is some sand, and the sand seemed like a trace of water flowing through before. Could it be a place that was covered by sea 9,000 years ago? In this case, it is possible that Atlantis really existed. Based on what Plato described in his book, Critias. 9,000 years ago, the War of Atlantean and Athens took place between those outside the Pillars of Hercules at the Strait of Gibraltar. In the other side was Africa continental. And there was another isolated land next to the Africa continental, which is the Atlantis city. But, in the early Africa, the land was actually smaller than what it looks right now. Part of it was actually covered by water. If Plato is right, the sunken Atlantic city is actually not under the water, but on the land, which it formed to the eyes of the Sahara after 9,000 years later. Coincidence? Or another fairy tale? The Eye of the Sahara is located in Mauritania. Mauritania is Africa's second largest mineral nation, that export over $300 million worth of precious gems and metals every year. The mining industries accounted for well over 35% of the Mauritanian economy. According to Plato, Atlantis was a country rich in gold, silver and tin. There are such as the actual metals, particularly the presence of large quantities of gold and tin in Atlantis. And in Atlantis, an entire wall surrounding one of the circular zones was plated in tin. The walls of the city were said to be plated in metals, which to us were rare and valuable, but to the original inhabitants were common and plentiful. These arguments and coincidences are relatively significant, that people would like to think the two places are the same. There was a saying that, the lost city Atlantis is a place where the boat will never reach. Does it imply the Atlantis is not under the sea, but on the land? Then is the eyes of the Sahara is the remain of the lost city Atlantis? What do you think? What if the high civilization of Atlantis really existed 9,000 years ago? Then there are many unexplainable things will become explainable, and the myths will no longer be myths. God exists,